stand before you to today proudly say that I was an anxious child. I used to lie on the grass during recess and look up at the sky and wonder, what if my blue is someone else's red? Would their sky then look red? I realized that I'd never know. I couldn't ask them because they'd think that red is called blue, and I definitely couldn't jump into their bodies and see for myself. This led me to ask myself a series of pretty frightening questions. Am I alone in the world and in my perception of it? What is reality? These were heavy questions for a third grader. To be honest, maybe those weren't the exact questions I was asking myself in third grade, but today I'm a 22-year-old neuroscience major, and these are some of the questions that I think about. So as an aspiring scientist, I want to try to answer this question as scientifically as I can. So in a more fleshed out way, how do we go from the outside world, all the information that's bouncing around outside of us, to our inner world, our experiences, the images we see when we open our eyes? The truth is, I don't have one answer to this question, and there's a lot of theories. But for today, I'm going to try to distill this into two levels. The first is sensation, how that information gets into our bodies, and the second is sensory integration, what we do with that information once it gets in. Okay, level one, sensation. For us, that is hearing, smell, touch, taste, and sight. Ancient Roman philosophers believed that sensation was the most objective and unbiased form of experiencing reality. I'd argue that this raw data is not a perfect reflection of the information that's out there. In fact, it's biased. It's completely defined by the system that collected it, our bodies. As fellow human beings, you most likely sense your perceptual world primarily through vision. So light waves are constantly bouncing around our environment, and a fraction of that light is picked up by rods and cones in our retina. Those rods and cones send signals through a bunch of different neurons all the way up to our brains, eventually resulting in the perceptual experience of an image. But not everyone is visually dominated. Some blind people have learned to construct their perceptual worlds through touch. Some have learned to use a primitive human version of echolocation using sound. So different people might use their sensory machinery, their interface with the world, differently to construct their environments. Here's another example. What if we stretch our imagination even further toward a species with a radically different machine interface with the world than we do? Let's think about birds. Birds have a sense called magnetoreception. It allows them to sense the Earth's magnetic fields. This guides their migratory patterns and orients them in space, kind of like an internal compass, or so we think. Let's think about sharks. Sharks also have a really different interface than us. They don't look really anything like us. And they're really good hunters in the ocean. And they primarily use their sense of smell to look for prey, or smell for prey. They have a sense called electroreception. So in that moment where they have to make a sharp movement to grab their prey, they'll rely on the minute electrical currents that are generated when their prey contracts a muscle. Can we for a moment this is futile, but just try to imagine what it'd be like to have magnetoreception. Maybe we're surrounded by a tangible swirl of magnetic waves all the time. And then what if we have electroreception? Maybe we have an impulse, jerk movement anytime someone nearby you contracts a muscle. Imagine the disturbance we'd feel if they turn on their phone. The truth is, we have no idea. And we definitely can't ask a bird or a shark what this is like for them. And we certainly can't jump into their bodies and see for ourselves. But what I want you to take away here is that the world can be a vastly different place if you have a different interface with it. Whether that's in thinking about other animals, so birds and sharks, or about people. So that's level one, sensation, the first gate of information into our bodies. But consider that we are constantly being bombarded by a bunch of different types of stimuli from a lot of these different sensory inputs. What do we do with it? How do we combine it? It has to be combined, filtered, processed, compared with each other. Basically, it has to go through a really complex filter, a lot of neurons, all before any of this information can reach our perceptual awareness. This is level 2, sensory integration. This is a pretty complicated neuroscientific picture. I don't have all the answers here, and neither do the best scientists out there. So today I'm going to try to spare us both and bring you a few examples instead. Okay, here we have an optical illusion. If you're not sighted, I'll verbally explain so you can follow along. But to me, what this looks like is a green and white checkerboard with an X through the center. One side of the X is kind of like a pink or a lighter red, and the other side of the X is a darker pink or kind of a red. But if we zoom in closer, we can see that that's not the case. They're both the same shade. They appear different, though, because some squares are neighboring white and other squares are neighboring green. This is an effect called color assimilation, where, broadly, colors appear differently due to their immediate surroundings. Our brains are constantly trying to figure out what we're seeing based on context. We're basically guessing machines, and sometimes we guess wrong. But these little errors can be interesting windows into how our brains construct reality. Here, we're integrating multiple types of visual inputs to figure out what's in front of us. Here's another example. This is my friend Maya. I'm sorry, Maya, but today I'm going to refer to you as an amorphous blob. So how do we know that this amorphous blob is a person, or Maya? How do we know that that amorphous blob is a squirrel? This is constructed through a lifetime of learning and experience, a lifetime of looking at other amorphous blobs and knowing what they are. So here, we're not only integrating multiple types of visual inputs, but we're also integrating it with our experience and our knowledge and expectations. Here's a more potent example of how sensory integration and our errors can be harnessed for therapeutic benefit. 80% of amputee patients experience something called phantom limb pain. It's a pain in the limb that's no longer attached to their body. There's a mismatch between actual nerve connections and what the patient knows and expects to be true. This mismatch can cause excruciating pain and a lot of tension felt by amputee patients. But in the 1990s, a neuroscientist named V.S. Ramachandran put forth a remarkably simple and really cost-effective technology using just a mirror and a box. He calls it the mirror box therapy. How this works is that the patient will put their phantom limb, or the absence of it, into the box so it's hidden from view, and they'll place their healthy, unaffected limb on the outside of the box so that it's reflected by the mirror. And this will create an illusion of two unaffected limbs. The patient isn't dumb. Obviously, they know that the mirror is just that, a mirror. But because our brains prioritize visual inputs, this illusion is convincing enough for some patients to really dramatically reduce the pain and tension felt in phantom limb pain. It's also been shown to improve motor function in some stroke patients. So here, we're harnessing this illusion for therapeutic good. So from these examples, we might realize that everything, reality, is just kind of an really complicated illusion. But illusion doesn't mean not real or fake. It just means that this is our brain's best guess, our best approximation of what's out there. And for the purposes of us living our daily lives, this is good enough. We are simultaneously observing and constructing our reality. So from these examples, from the mirror box to optical illusions to different species across the animal kingdom, we might come to the conclusion that our bodies, our machinery, our interface allows us a tiny peephole, albeit filtered a lot of times, into the expanse that is the world outside of us. But consider the expanse of the world within us. This is created by our machinery, by our senses, by our processing in our brains. That's really remarkable, to me, at least. Rumi said that the universe is not outside of you. Everything that you want, you already are. Knowing this, that your world is inside you, may very well be isolating and anxiety-inducing like it was to my third grade self. But today, this realization that I am unique, and so is everyone else around me, brings me peace, appreciation, connection with the world around me, and empathy for those sitting right next to me. And I hope my talk today has helped you think so too.